Okay. You probably hear like every video start, okay. All right. Okay, so this is, that's one of those three core components, HTML. Remember on that client side where we had HTML, we had JavaScript, and we had CSS. So HTML is the frame of your house. This provides the structure to the document. Whoops. So I had a YouTube video queued up here for the demo, and it just played and then went on to the next video. Okay, so yeah, hypertext markup language. I'm not sure what makes it hyper or anything like that. I think it was just kind of trendy in those days to apply that prefix. And, that's just one of the things you get to do when you create something new. You get to name it. So this will be part of your coursework, downloading the starter app where you're going to actually get started on that Instagram assignment. So this is just kind of the foundation stuff is done for you and all set up. A lot of lingo here. There's really only three things I think you kind of need to commit to memory. We'll get to those. It's just terminology stuff. So when I start talking about elements and tags and attributes, as students, this is your responsibility to understand what I'm talking about. I'll build a page for you in the demo time, and well, this happens by default. It's applying pre-made styles. There's no CSS here, right? There's no coats of paint on the wall or anything like that in our house here. But the browser still does apply its own styles, and we'll kind of look and see what that means when we just create our basic web page. So how do web pages work? They are organized in boxes. And let me show this to you. Let's do the same search. We'll do Google Calgary AB. So what I'm going to show you is, this is called the inspector. And no matter what browser you use, you typically have something called the inspector. There's typically a couple of ways to access it. You can go to your tools menu. Get comfortable with this for sure. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Developer tools. Is that what I want? Yeah, there we go. So there's a couple of ways you can bring this up. This is kind of what's going on under the hood inside of your browser. And this is a very valuable tool when you're creating your web pages. You can feel free. You're not going to hurt anything by poking around in here. There's nothing that you can do to these web pages. But this is what an HTML document looks like, at least on this Google homepage. I suspect a lot of this is generated dynamically, so yours won't look nearly this ugly. So that's one way to bring up this window. And as I said, get comfortable with this. Another way to do it, I think it's Control-Shift-J on my computer. Oh, there it is. So it's always close at hand. It's going to be different for Mac users and Linux and Windows users as well, but there's always some sort of shortcut. The other option, and again, most browsers do this, you can hover your mouse and right click and just type or do the inspector. So this is what I just opened up, but now since I'm actually looking at a specific element on the page, it's going to open that spot up for me automatically. And you can start seeing what they're talking about when we say that a web page is arranged into this box-like structure. So there's one box, and I can kind of go up the list, and you notice that the box gets bigger. So here it was before. It's a little box, and there's probably another little box down here, yeah. And inside that box, there's another box. You can keep digging down. So yours aren't going to get nearly this complicated, but this is something you need to be aware of. And this is basically how they're arranged. So each of these boxes are just things that you're going to enter in by hand in your IDE, Cloud9. And this is how your browser, your client, is going to treat that program or that code that you provided. So returning to the slides. any questions so far while this thing comes up? Okay, slow and steady. All right. So let's all this to say certain boxes serve different purposes. And you can sometimes kind of tell by the names that are assigned to them. So a header, as you might suspect, would probably be something at the top of the page, whereas a footer would be, for that copyright, or about us or legal information and all that kind of stuff at the bottom of the page. Every web page consists of these sections, various sections for different purposes. So here are some common tags. Does anyone know offhand which of these ones is the biggest box? The one that wraps all the other little boxes? Close. It's yes, HTML. So every single HTML page, very good, good guess, consists of this HTML tag, which makes the HTML element document. The suggestion was body. Body contains everything that you can see on the page. So you have this HTML document, and there's a smaller box called the body, and all the boxes inside that body box are actually seen in the client view. There's also a head. Oh, it's not up here. Head is where we put all the information that doesn't get displayed to the page. We'll see this in a bit. Hope I didn't advance too far there. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now here's the anatomy of the tag. Now this is what I think you really need to just sort of commit to memory, because I'm going to be using these terms, and as I said, you need to understand what I'm talking about, not only to get the information, but then to turn to Google and search when you don't know something. So this combined piece of code, does anyone know what this tag does? The A tag? Yes, exactly. So we have this A, or element, denoted by the less than sign and the A on the left-hand side. A whole bunch of different attributes on the inside. href is applied a value. Some text displayed to the screen, and a closing tag. So the first thing to notice is that any sort of tag, with at least a couple of notable exceptions, inconsequential, every opening tag has a closing tag. And inside the opening tag, you see where this one starts here, this one closes off, we have an attribute, the href attribute. I think this just stands for hypertext reference. I have no idea. Check Wikipedia. I'd be curious to know. But every element can be assigned a value, which is denoted by this equal sign. So if you have any sort of programming background in general, this is kind of analogous to saying, okay, well, here's a variable. This variable is going to contain a value. This is the value I'm going to assign to it. So that variable or that attribute is always on the left-hand side. The value that you assign to it is always on the right-hand side. Different data types as well. You can notice this one's a very specific type. It's a link to another web address. This is passed as a string, as you can see between the double quotation marks. You can also pass integer values in certain cases as well. So from the top, an element, tag and element are kind of synonymous, kind of, sort of. Element, attribute. An attribute always has a name. It can be assigned a value. And really, those are the things. Element, attribute. I say you need to assign the href attribute a value, otherwise this tag's not going to work. So that's the kind of language that you need to pick up. So here's a few different types of tags. Here's a P tag, which is just short for paragraph. What this does, and this is like lends itself to those default styles. If you use a P tag as opposed to, say, like a div tag or something, You get wider top margins and bottom margins. It's meant to look like the paragraph on a piece of paper if you're reading a novel or something. Oftentimes, a tag, here's another tag. So here's the P tag, here's the A tag we were just looking at. Oftentimes, a tag will have attributes to which you assign values. Attributes on the left, the value you want to assign is on the right. Now, this is one of these things, I don't know, you just do this for a while and some things just kind of bug you. Every tag, opening tag has a closing tag. This is one of these notable exceptions. And I'll show you how pedantic people like myself address, which is kind of I don't know, it's just like sloppy grammar. Things always kind of change, and this is just one of those things, and it just looks sloppy to someone like me. So sometimes, yes, only a single tag, no closing tag. Opinion, right? Opinion, jeez. Okay, so when we're creating these boxes, the tags on the outside form the biggest box. And inside of this large box, in this case we're using that article tag, we create a smaller box. And inside this smaller box, we create two like sibling boxes. They're like brother and sister. I would say that this sister box here, this bigger box would be its parent. This biggest box would be its grandparent. So this is how you think in this when you're thinking about nesting boxes. There's like a sibling box, and there's a whole chain of parent boxes right up to the biggest box of them all, which is HTML. Oh, one thing that is worth noting, just because I have it up here on the screen, when you're writing your code, when you're creating your web page, it's a good idea to indent. See how easy it was for me to look and say, okay, well, article is the biggest box. It's because everything inside of it is pushed to the right by one step. And then these two smaller boxes, these sibling boxes, are once again indented. So this is a really good way just to keep your code nice and neat, and it makes it so you can track down bugs. Because even something like HTML is not trivial, and it has its own syntax, and it needs to be respected if your app is to do what you want it to do. This is just one of those things that's going to really help you out. So an HTML page, and we just kind of covered this. We were talking about the biggest tag, HTML. This is the biggest box, and all the other boxes fit inside of it. The other two main components, so this is what every single web page has that HTML outer tag. It has a head at the top, the head tag, and then it has a body right beneath the head, just like the head on your body. The head, all this stuff here is where you load the styles, the JavaScript. You set certain metadata. For example, if you want to create a blog post, you want to make it look nice on the Facebook feed, you can set certain metadata in the head, which lets you choose the picture, the description. All that stuff happens in the head. You don't actually see it, with one exception, because there's always an exception. The body is where the content goes. This is where how you nest these boxes becomes important, because the choices that you make are going to impact the user's experience, the person that's coming to visit your page. So here's the skeleton. This is about as minimal as you can get. Notice good indentation. Oh, this is also, well, I won't get too much into that. That's a tag that just tells you what version of HTML this is. So since the latest one, this says, okay, well, this document's not something weird like HTML4 or something like that. It's just the newest one, HTML5. So that's what that says, just in case that, there's an older web page that hasn't been updated, because it happens. Your header, your body, and that's the order. Every single web page you'll ever see looks like that. All right. I always hate talking about these things. Semantic tags, these are mostly for programmer benefit. Header means something to me, right? Because I'm a human being. I speak the English language. I know what the header means on top of a document. Same with footer. Nav, okay, that's kind of short. probably navigation, right? Semantic tags, they have meanings on a side. Maybe it's like a caption. The reason I kind of hate talking about these is because they really don't make a difference. These are for programmer benefit. The browser just treats them all like what are called div tags, D-I-V. We'll show you that in just a little while. So, oh yes, I was going to say, yeah, these things I kind of hate as well. This EM, it basically italicizes text. And it really depends on the default styles of your browser. Remember, I mentioned this right at the opening slide. We're not applying CSS today. That happens on Wednesday. But every browser does have its default style. So default usually means anything between this EM tag and this closing EM tag is going to have probably the italicized style applied to it. Strong, on the other hand, depending on the browser, probably is going to make it bold. So certain tags change the appearance of text. And this is another good example of that. I think even the most recreational HTML user probably is familiar with these ones. If you've never seen it before, then that's fine too. These are just headers. These are one of the older tags. The biggest one, H1, biggest on the screen. These actually go down to H7, I think. You can search Google if you like. They really start to not make a difference after H3 or H4, again, browser or style dependent. So these, another good example of tags that change the way text looks. Okay, so let's do this. You can follow along. So now a lot of what I'm going to do as part of this demo is go real slow with using the tools. So if you can keep up, and I'll try to go slow on purpose. This lady, sorry, I'm on this community auction site. She's selling boys size 1 shoes if anyone's interested. All right. Sorry, I just got totally distracted. Are there any questions about what was on the slides? Now, okay, here's a different question. Now, I suspect some of you have used HTML before. How much of this was review for, well, even a little bit of review for people? Okay, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. So that's what we're going to do today, is just build one from the ground up. And as part of that, this is going to be a refresher on how to use your IDE, Cloud9, and how to use GitHub. So I'm going to take a slightly different approach. Because remember last day when I did GitHub, I created a Cloud9 workspace first. I came to here, clicked on all these things, set up a demo site, and then I decided, oh, shoot, I got to save this somewhere, right? What if Cloud9 goes bankrupt? I want to save it off in the cloud or some other part of the cloud. So then I went to GitHub, created a repository. For the new people, new person, GitHub is version control. So it just tracks the changes that you made, and it allows you to roll back all your changes right to the very beginning of when you created the repository. So we did that as the second step. This is way more easier. So I'm going to, this is a little bit too big here. I'm going to create a new repository before I get started. I'm going to set this all up for me. Makes it a lot better. So I'll say new repository. Please follow along if you want. I'll call this September, week 1, day 2, demo. Okay. All right, so again, refresher. This is what it's going to look like when you type in a URL or someone searches out your project on Google or something like that. That's the name of your repository, and it has the same kind of similar file naming conventions on your operating system, like no spaces, no weird characters, all that kind of stuff. Enter the description. It says it's optional. You should enter a description, even if it's just something to remind you. This is what we did different last time. Last time, we did not initialize this repository, remember. If I do it this time, what this allows me to do is make a clone. right away. Before I had to take the repository, add it, commit all the changes and push it. Now I'm simply going to clone this repository with a single README. README is just a text file. So I'll say create repository. There we go. And this is it. So here's your repository. I hope this is still review. And really all it did was it just put this text file here with some light formatting. This MD, if you're curious, stands for Markdown. So this is just kind of a joke because hypertext markup language. You mark up these documents and it tells the browser what this information should look like. Markdown is just kind of a joke. It's meant to be very simple. Shoot, I got to look at the raw one here somewhere. Oh, here we are. It's just ordinary text. So it kind of works in the same way. What's making that big header, if I look at it over here, is this hash mark. So that's the difference, right? This is the markdown language. It's meant to be able to have some nice fancy formatting like this, if you just want some basic information or documentation. But it also makes it easy to read if you were to copy and paste it into an email. That's what Markdown does. Very worthwhile, it's very easy, especially if you know HTML. Okay, so now I've got my repository. I've got to get the address. So I got to actually go back one here. And I can get that address from here. So now you guys are going to want the HTTP one. You can also get a different one, but actually it's not even giving it to me. That's okay. Oh yeah, here's the SSH one. You don't want this one. You see the difference there? Get at github.com versus https://. Not a big thing to stress about. Just use this one. You're not doing anything different really. So I copied that to my clipboard. Now I'm coming back to Cloud9. So this is the very first page. I logged in. I've got all my projects here. I'm going to create a new workspace, a new IDE. So just as you did before, give it a good name. I'm not sure how good my name is, but that's what I'm working with. All right, something descriptive. And now with that URL that you copied from GitHub, I'll go slow here if you're following along. I just paste that in there. So now I don't need to worry about, choosing a template. Remember last day we chose the HTML5 template. What this is going to do is it's just going to make a copy of what's currently stored on GitHub. Much easier. So I'll say that, I'll say create workspace, and here we go. Ada Lovelace, by the way, was the very first computer programmer. She wrote a program for a machine called Charles Babbage's difference engine. This was like in the 1850s. The difference engine was not constructed until the mid-90s, I believe. But Ada, Countess Ada Lovelace. It's not doing anything for you?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's because we're all doing that at once.
We're asking so much of it.
Oh, I think you got to scroll up to some names. It looks like you've got duplicate names. So who else was having a problem?
I used to capital.
I don't think capital is
Right.
Yay!
Take out the capitals. That's kind of. Yeah, well, just definitely naming convention. I wasn't aware of the case sensitivity though. So if you're having problems creating your workspace, what we just discovered about Cloud9 is when you name your repository, you cannot use capital letters. So be mindful of that. Okay, so now, hopefully, I'll go slow if you guys are still churning up. What you see here is that markdown document that was created when I initialized the Git repository. So this, all the files here, there's only one, of course, are identical to this one. It's a clone. The neat thing about Git is that there's no centralized repository. You can push and pull to any repository that you want. So all the functionality that you see here on GitHub can be done the exact same way on the command line over here, even to the point where you could just open it up and let people clone it from your own personal repository. Okay, so long story short. All right, so first thing we want to do, though, is create this index.html. There's a couple ways to do this. I think the way that you're probably most comfortable would be right-hand clicking on this file tree. There's probably other names for it. That's what I call it. I call it the file tree. So if you hear me say that, you know, okay, it's on the left-hand side. Down here, right at the bottom, you say new file, of course. So I'm going to name this one index. Oh, it didn't let me rename. Here we go. Index.html. Now, just because it's already happened a couple times, when you're doing these kind of things, naming files, it's just a good idea to just make everything lowercase. Just be mindful of that. It makes things a lot easier for yourself as well. Okay, so now I've got this empty file. Nothing in it. What do I need first? Whoops. Yes, HTML. So here's the big one, big tag. Cloud9 is sometimes very helpful, and sometimes it can be a little bit annoying, but you notice what happened there. When I typed in HTML, it created the closing tag for me automatically. That's nice to begin with. It can get kind of irritating when you're in the middle of something. So.
Wait, how did you get the second window?
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry, yes. All right, so all I did, and I'm just going to save it. When I created the file over here, I just double-clicked, just like that. So that's the HTML file I just created. Okay, so what else do I need? Head. Notice that I indent. There, it wrote it for me again. Of course, body is next. Okay, so, let's just keep this really simple, and we're going to kind of stick with that computer programming convention. I'm just going to say, hello world. That is the traditional first program. I think it was actually the inventors of the C language that established that tradition. Okay, so now I've got a fully functioning web page. It doesn't look like much, right? But this is something we can serve up over the internet. So to do that, now we're going to get kind of dipping back down into this area here. What's this called? Where my mouse is. The command line. Yes. So these are the three main components. Your file tree, your text editor, that's all it is. Just a text editor, nothing fancy, just like whatever you're probably using on your computer. And then down here, we've got the command line. Now this, I don't want to confuse anyone, but we also get a little bit of server output here as well. So just, don't stress about that. This is where a lot of the work you do gets done. This is what professional web developers do. I'm not ready to make a commit yet. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run my server. So this is what takes those requests from the client, from the browser. I go to run, and the one we're going to be using this is probably still the world's most popular. It's called Apache. So this is looking in this directory that I've created, and it's just, saying, okay, well, I'm ready to accept connections on, well, it's actually port 443 in this case, because it's a secure address. So anyone who comes and says, okay, give me this resource, serve it up, give it back to the client. So I'm going to open that up. All I did there was I just left-clicked on the URL, and it opens up on the other screen. And this is the default style. So not much to look at. It's just Times New Roman on a white background with black text or very dark gray text, actually usually turns out to be. All right, any questions about that? So if I were to say, okay, bring up a new project on GitHub and set up your workspace and get a file going, you'd all be able to do that? Good. All right, so let's actually flesh this thing out a little bit. But yes, question.
Yeah, in terms of, so in my GitHub, I ended up setting 2 repositories.
Mm-hmm.
How do I commit to a different one? Is it during the -m function?
Yeah.
And what would I specifically type?
That's actually a pretty big question. It's very similar to what I outlined in the class summary, where you take that new GitHub repository, the URL, and you add it as a different remote. So before we say git remote add origin URL, you would say git add remote some other name URL, and then you would push to that. So if it's an issue, we'll do that when it's yes, but we can figure this out when you guys get your coursework. Okay, so I'm going to come back to here, trying to get my bearings. Okay, so now recall the difference between the head and the body. Everything you put in the head, it lends itself to styling the body, but nothing that you actually put in there gets seen, with one exception, because there's always an exception, the title. And I'm just going to say hello again up here. So watch what it did. So currently up here in this browser tab, it's got the URL. So now if I refresh, because I just made a change, I saved the change, I want to get that new file. So I press refresh, watch what happens. So this is going to change to hello. So this is like kind of that one weird exception. You don't see it in the browser, but there you see it, right? All right. So, and this is a good thing to do when, especially if you're thinking in terms of search engine optimization. Give it a very descriptive title. Makes it easier for Google to pick it up and direct people to your page.
Did it save automatically, or did you do something? That just said I read.
Yes. Okay. So let's do another change and follow along. So I set up like that YouTube thing that started playing. I'm going to share my hobbies with you. This, for better or for worse, I think it's cool. You guys can disagree. Uh-oh. Yes, please. All right. So what I've been doing for the last year is something called the rocket stove. And I'm going to I want people to come to my webpage and learn about rocket stoves. Everyone wants a rocket stove, a bold proclamation. So what I just did there, just made a couple of changes. So this is just going to establish that process. So what you saw before was this. Added a little bit more content, changed the title. This is my hobby site, rocket stoves. All right, and I'm going to add some different content because before it said hello world. Everyone wants a rocket stove. And you can tell already, hopefully, just by virtue of seeing the slides, this H1 is a header tag. So before we had this hello world. Actually, well, let's save that first. Address the initial issue here. I've just saved my file. I come over to the tab over here. What's sitting in the browser is that old file, right? So you need to make another request to the server on the back end and say, give me this file again. To do that, it's just as easy as pressing refresh. That's all you're doing. Say, give me this file again. All right, there you go. So everyone wants a rocket stove.
Sorry, how did you save it?
Oh, okay. Oh, shoot. It should be just typical stuff like Control S. The other option, of course, is if you go to File and press Save. So yeah, so like you see on the shortcut key there. If you need, I just assumed. Control S will save that document. All right. So what I've got is a little video I made of me and my rocket stove, and I want to show this up. So this was actually playing. I put this rocket stove thing online. And the next thing in the queue is about people who live in RVs full time. So I'm clearly in an elite crowd here. This, okay, so here's my rocket stove. It's just like 12 seconds long. There's no sound or anything. There's me. Woo, there it goes. Whoosh, rocket stove. There it is. Behold, this is what I'm going to heat my house with next winter. So this is like my current hobby. And before it goes into pellet stove repair and renovations, I'm going to take that URL. Oh, wait, I might have to go back. Hang on. But Facebook is nice enough to give you some code. So I was looking on my different view before. Oh, embed. Here we are. So if you go to this embed tab, it gives you all the code that you need to just put this thing on your web page. So yeah, for your reference. I'm going to copy that code as is, because it's going to have like a bunch of weird numbers and letters and stuff. Come back to my IDE, and I paste. So paste is Control V. Or you can also go to the edit menu and press paste as well. All right. Okay, so now assuming that YouTube has not led me astray, I should be able to see this now in my browser. Okay, there it goes. So easy, right? You can do this with anything, and there's also different settings. So if you want it to just start playing automatically, or if you want it to loop endlessly, there's other settings that we can do here. But maybe we'll get to that if there's time. Okay, well, it does work. This is a YouTube problem, not a Dan problem. Go. Come on. We've already seen the video, and it's like, well, why do we want to watch it again? All right, so we'll know that it's done when they start talking about RVs. All right, so let's add a bit more content. Right up here above, I'm going to enter just a little bit of text, background about the rocket stove. So I say, I don't know. Hopefully I won't get any spelling mistakes. Rocket stoves are designed to generate more heat from less wood. They produce a hot, low-emission flame that can be used for cooking or heating. And they are growing in popularity in developing countries. Through experimentation, I will determine the most appropriate way to apply this technology in the Calgary context. Very nice. It's like I should work for Wikipedia. All right. Did I make any spelling mistakes? All right, so this is the paragraph mark, and I want to show you the difference between paragraphs and divs, and it's going to be very subtle. Paragraph has that default style, so I press refresh, loads that content. YouTube's a little bit slower to go, but here's all that stuff that I just wrote. If I come back to here, I'm going to change this to a different tag. This is sort of a generic, just empty box that means nothing beyond the fact that it is a box. And the reason I'm showing you this is just to show that certain tags have default styles. This is an important point to note. So watch what happens. It's going to, see a little bit less room on the margin. Very subtle change. All right, so I'm going to set that back. Change that back to a P tag. So, this is, this page, people might want to come here. I want people to come here and just, find resources. So I may want to link to more articles about rocket stoves. One I found over here, this is what we use that A tag for. There we go. So I want this text here, I want that to turn into a link that people can click on. All right. So I use the A tag for that. We talked about that a lot with the slides. What is the technical term for that href? What's the name for that thing? Whoops. Attribute. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I got the wrong URL. Let me see if I can paste that again. Okay, I think I got it that time. So all I'm doing is just copying and pasting a URL. Oh, shoot. I got way too much stuff there. All right. I hope I don't have that same thing on the line here. There we go. Okay. Phew. All right. So I close off that opening tag. And see, this is where, you see what happened there? Watch it happen again. So I've just created this A tag, and the Cloud9 ID is very helpful and helpful to a fault. So if I type in, if I close this tag off, it provides that A tag for me automatically. This is kind of a pain, right? Because now I got to take this guy and paste it over here, right? So this text now will turn blue. It'll have a little line underneath it, and you will be able to click on it to get more information about rocket stoves. So very basic HTML stuff here. Okay, let's refresh. And this is a good idea too. Refresh frequently. Just do a little change, make sure it works, and then return to your work and just make incremental changes. A lot of people, especially new programmers, try to do too much at once. Just make sure you understand and go as slow as necessary. So here's my link using that A tag. Uh-oh, but I left. Okay, so I don't want to go away from my page. I want to open up a new tab in the same browser window. To do this, I can set another attribute. So you're already familiar with the href attribute, which shows you the source of the document. There's also a target attribute, and it looks like this. I'm not really sure why, but it's got an underscore and it says blank. Right, so this will open up a new window. I'll show you the difference. So I just save, and notice again, just maybe some finer points here. Attributes are separated by spaces. So if you had any sort of programming experience, and maybe you've seen something with comma separation or something like that, when we're talking about HTML, each of these attributes and the values that are assigned to them are separated by spaces. And an attribute can really have any number, a tag can have any number of attributes. So we've got 2. There's no reason why we couldn't have 50 if we wanted to. Okay, so let's see the change. Press refresh because I've got to reload that page. Now when I press it, hopefully another window will open up here. There it goes. Okay, so my rocket stove page is still loaded. Further resources open up in a new tab. So just a little trick that you can see for yourself. So what else can we do? We should put in some images, right? Just basic website stuff. And I may bring this one up next day for Wednesday to style it and see if we can, make it look a little bit more presentable. Uh-oh. It says we're dropping audio frames. All right. Okay, one thing I kind of forgotten about is Git. So I've been making all these changes and just going crazy here and adding new content. If my IDE were to crash, it would be gone. So I want to make frequent commits, frequent saves, just like when you're hitting Control S on your keyboard. Do this frequently. So I come back to my IDE. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And I got to find a bash shell. So you can tell the bash shell, it says bash right on the tab. Right now, I'm actually looking at the output from the Apache server. Remember how I went up to run? I said run server, Apache. This is what the server is reporting back. All right, so if there's any errors, you're going to see them here. You need to find bash. So this is the Linux command line interface. There's lots of different shells. Bash is just one of many. It's probably one of the more popular ones. What I want to do is commit the changes I've made. So first thing, I won't pick on you to answer these questions for me. First thing I do is I just check the status. Git space status. Press enter. Okay, so this is a little big to see, but here I'll make this a little bit bigger. It's all it's telling me right now is like, well, I see this new file here. It's called index.html, but I'm not tracking it right now. This is what Git's telling me. So what do I do? Now I'm going to pick on you. What do I have to do to this file? Add. Yes. So there's a couple of ways. I'll do it the long way. Git add index.html. So you can just list whatever files you want, or you can use the period or the minus capital A, and it will do it all for you. So I'll hit enter. Now when I type in git status, you're going to see a change here. If you're going to learn anything from this course, I think Git is probably the tool that could carry you forward to new places. Git is very important. So now git status is telling me, yep, got a new file. It's ready to be committed. It's staged for commit, but it's not committed. I got to tell myself, I got to leave a little message to myself. I say git commit, and I use that -m option. And in between double quotes, I say, okay, get index page or get index.html. Doesn't have to be, verbose, but
Is this case sensitive?
yes, all this stuff is case sensitive until you get to the string. Everything. Now make sure you're on the correct tab. So you might see something like this. All right, hang on. I'll just go take a quick look here. All right, so I'll leave this up for you. Just recap what I was doing here. Added the index file. It's staged, but no commitment has been made. At this point, I could reverse that stage, and it would be like it never happened. So all I did here, down here at the bottom, is now I'm going to attach a message to myself. I'm going to commit this. It's going to go into Git, and at any point, at any time, I can just come back to that stage in development of this project if the mood strikes. Git commit -m means give it a message, and put whatever message you like between the double quotes. It should be kind of describing the action that you're going to take, and this is kind of a thing you pick up with time. But what this is saying, if you pull these changes, you're going to get index.html. That's the message I gave myself. So I do that. I press enter. Commitment made. Now it's locked in. I say git status. Everything's all clean, but oh, wait, I'm actually ahead of my repository. My repository, the one on GitHub, is now out of sync with what I've been working on here. So I need to make this, remember, it just currently contains a README file with nothing of particular value in it. I need to get that index file and update my remote repository. So I say git push origin, that's the name, that's GitHub. It's just the name that you assigned it. You didn't even know it. Git origin master. So what you're working on right now is the master branch. Press enter. It's going to ask you for your username. Your password will not show up. I forgot my password. Did I do it? Oh, invalid username or password. Try that again. All right, there it goes. Whew. For a second there, I thought I just kind of lost it. All right, so coming back to GitHub, so this is the old state, but I just pushed the changes I made from Cloud 9. So if I refresh this, we're doing the exact same thing, remember. Just refreshing data from the page. So this is the old page. I get the new page. Oh, and there it is, index.html. And now anyone can come along, they can check it out. If you want to keep your projects private, it's $5 American a month for 3 private repositories. Just FYI. So there's the Rocket Stove webpage I just created. It looks so much less dramatic than this crazy looking thing right here. And it's still not coming. Oh, there it goes. There I am. Woo. What fun, I tell you. How I occupy my time. So I got to make sure it stops. There we are. All right. So where does that leave us? Oh, yes, images. So I'm going to show you how to just do a little bit more of this HTML stuff, get you, comfortable with this this IDE, and then you can start working on your Instagram applications. But just because this is kind of like the basic sort of HTML that everyone seems to ask about first, I'm going to add a few images of different rocket stoves. So coming along here, I'll set up a new section in my document and put it below that video. I'll make this an H2, so a slightly smaller header. Sizes. Okay, so that's my description of this upcoming section. I think I'll use a P tag again. So this is the content of your website, and whoops, there's no PO tag that I'm aware of. And you notice also, I can't stress this enough, actually, because I just realized I have my tabs misaligned. They're way misaligned. This is the kind of thing that drives me nuts. I just want to show you what I'm talking about. So as I was saying before, when you're nesting these boxes, make sure you hit tab on your keyboard. So these are a little bit out of line. I don't like the way it looks. This is definitely out of line. All right, that's a little better. Makes it it's a good idea to make sure everything lines up. Now I suspect this is out of line too. Yeah. There we go. It's weird because it gives me 2 tabs. So I know this looks like nitpicking, but it's actually, as a professional programmer, you kind of got to keep this like your ducks in a row. So you're seeing me, I won't do this anymore. Shoot. You guys shouldn't suffer. When you start suffering, then you'll know that you should have listened to me and made sure that these things are indented correctly. All right, so H2, some more information about the rocket stove. Let's use some of those emphasis or stylistic tags. I'm going to try EM, or first I'll put a P in there. That's my paragraph. We'll say EM, appropriate technology. And I'll close that because I'm just, introducing a new term. This is kind of if you were writing a paper of some sort. Appropriate technology is that which is sustainable, locally sourced, and low maintenance, depending on where you are in the world. Whoops. You may see rocket stoves constructed out of steel, cob, concrete, or even dug out of the ground. Okay. More information about rocket stoves. Let's just take a quick look. Remember, add a little bit at a time. Press refresh. Okay, so now here's my new header. This is the information I just entered. If you want to see how this stuff looks, how these boxes fall into place, do that right-hand click and inspect. So now this is the code that I just wrote, and you can see it. And you can do this, and you will do this in all of your projects because this is a very valuable resource. This is the YouTube video. Here's that H2 header. You can see it's just highlighted there. There's a box in there. Oh, and there's that EM. So I was right. Usually EM means italicized, but it depends. It's not always the case. Okay, so let's get a few pictures. I like to do Google Images, of course. I'm going to show you a little trick that you can get to bring these files into your project. So, I don't know, I'll find 3 ones. This one's made out of a coffee can. That looks pretty cool to me, so I'll grab that one. Has everyone done this kind of thing before? Should I go slow? I don't want to make any assumptions. What I'm trying to do is get the URL of this image so that I can download it into my own project. So if I take this view image, you can see it's not even a web page. It's just an image. There's no, if I were to inspect it, it's going to give some sort of boilerplate stuff. Maybe. Yeah. Just like this image style stuff. It's not really a web page. So I can take this and download it to my Cloud9 workspace. Watch how I do that. Oops. Sorry. Grab this guy. So now this is going to be done on the command line again. And I want you to watch. The file is going to appear right up here. So I use a program called w1d2, just like that. It's just one word, W-G-E-T, and then you give it the address or the URL of the file you want to retrieve. So I'm going to paste that URL I just took of the rocket stove. I hit enter, and it does. It downloads it for me. So now if you see up here in your file tree, there's my rocket stove. I just took this one off the internet. Now, this isn't really a good way to organize your files, and this is something you definitely want to think about, even in a very simple rudimentary page like this. Think about where you're going to store certain files, your HTML versus your CSS versus your JavaScript, for example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, or I like to call them directory, in my file tree. I right-hand click, just like when I created the index.html, and I say new folder instead of new file this time. And it's a good idea just to sort these things out. So I'm going to put all my images in a folder named images. This should be pretty familiar to you. If you can use the Linux command line, or you can just click, hold, and drag it in there. Right. So I'm going to get a couple more pictures. Put these on my web page. What else we got? That one's kind of like mine. I'll grab that one. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Grab that, come back to Cloud9, w1d2. There it goes, okay. So it didn't go in the directory I want, I'm just gonna drag it in there. Okay, that's good. One more, and then we'll call it a day. Let's see if we can find a weird looking one. I guess they're all kind of weird looking. Oh, that one's kind of cool, all right. So grab that again using w1d2 on the command line, w1d2 space URL. And you can even do this with web pages. If you see a web page you don't want to copy and paste out of the inspector, you just download the whole thing and inspect it on your in your IDE. So I got some weird image names. If you like, you can rename these. It's not a bad idea because they're just kind of weird looking. So I right hand click. I will say stove 1, right hand click, whoops, stove 2, and if it comes up, there we go, stove 3. All right, so I think you guys all remember the image tag. Let's bring that up. And I'm going to show you one final thing after I show you how to include these images. I'm going to show you the difference between the span and the div tag. So I showed you the div very small difference between that and the P tag. There's definitely a difference. Span serves a different purpose, and these are kind of the two elemental elements that you should be aware of. Okay, so let's make a few divs. Let's make this a little smaller. Okay, so I'm going to come down here right to the bottom of my page. I'm going to put these outside the paragraph. I could put them inside if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. And I'm going to use that image tag. So who remembers the very important attribute for the image tag? Source, yes. Image source, SRC, equals, and this has to be in quotations, single or double. I prefer double when I'm using HTML. Then I give it the location. Why did I do this? That's the name of the folder, exactly. This is, especially for people who aren't familiar with the command line, this is often a stumbling block. So you have to tell, well, the server in this case, where to find these resources, these images. Okay, so I'm going to grab image stove1.jpg, and I close it. Look at, strange, right? Cloud9 didn't try to create that closing tag. Remember how I was going off on, yeah, there still is a closing tag, right? This is like that weird exception, because there's always some exception. For curmudgeons like myself, I like to do this. You guys don't have to do that. I'm just being silly. All right, so I'm going to put that one in there, take a very small step, refresh the page, and make sure that it works. Refresh. Oh, this is a big image. Okay, so there it is. There's probably a way to make that smaller. What do you think? Yeah, I think so. All right, let's try that. Come to my IDE, and you might have guessed already, you actually set an attribute. So it's kind of a neat trick. You can just set the width, for example. I'm not going to make it pretty small. I'm going to make it, say, 300 pixels. If you only set one dimension, then the image doesn't twist itself to fit the dimensions. So I always just set the width and leave the height alone, or vice versa. So I'll refresh that. Hopefully this image will be a little bit more manageable size. Oh, yeah, there it is. So, I mean, it's still a big image, but I'm just displaying 300 pixels width worth of image. All right, so I'm going to create another div. And this is where that dramatic reveal is going to take place. I'm going to grab this one. And since I gave them, like, you know, pretty good names, I can recycle this code very easily. So I said stove 1, 2, and 3. So I'm just going to change this one to 3. Just change that one to 2. If you want to be a programmer, you want to be a good programmer, you got to be lazy. You don't want to hire the hardworking programmer. You got to be so lazy. He's cutting and pasting. He doesn't want to do any work. That's how you know he's a good programmer. All right, so I'm going to take this. I'm going to refresh the page. I should see all 3 of those images. Okay, there's my video. There they are. Looking pretty good. So now here's the difference. Here's the difference between div and span. I'm going to just swap these guys out. Whoops. Whoops. Come on. Span. 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 Okay. A few changes. What's the difference? Let's take a look. I'm going to scroll right to the bottom, so you're going to see how these boxes align themselves on the page. There they are. Side by side. Right? Very subtle difference. Well, it's not subtle. It's a very important distinction between div and span. A div will display as a block and occupy one side of the screen to the other. A span will fit itself in line with whatever came before it. And certain tags, you'll notice that this the P tag, for example, all this stuff occupies that one long line. So this is similar to a div in that it's block display. And actually, I can even show that to you just by doing an inspect. So we're not quite at CSS yet, but you can kind of see some of the styles that were rendered. So I'm going to click this P tag. So that's the highlighted box right there. Oh, yeah, and there it is, display block. Now, if I change this, this is CSS. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Or maybe I can't edit this one. Usually you can edit these things. All right. Well, let me find a different example. So here's the inspect. So this is the span tag here. This one doesn't have any styles. Oh, terrible example. Sorry, it doesn't show it. But yeah, the other one would be inline. Let's not go too crazy about that. Okay, so what do we cover? Basic skeleton HTML page. We talked about the difference between the head and the body. All our content goes in here. This is that one weird exception about the stuff in the head not being displayed to the screen. But this is also where we load all of our our CSS and all our JavaScript and all that kind of stuff. And then we just added some content. We just saw how we use this tool, this workflow. We create files over in the file tree, or we rearrange them as necessary. We change those files over here in the text editor. And whenever we want to do a commit, which is what we're going to do now, we work in the bash command line. One thing I actually probably haven't been stressing enough is that you do have to have a server running, right? Without this server, there's no access to this HTML page that you're running. The server takes these requests and it serves up this content. So yeah, just to backtrack a little bit, you want to actually see this thing, go up to run, start up Apache. You guys are going to be using something different when it comes time to do your apps, but for today's stuff and for just general interest, use Apache. Okay, so one last commit, and then you guys or I will do the class summary, and Troy will be around to help you out wherever you need it. So help me out here. How do I make this commit? Just walk me through it.
Just have a question.
Yes, of course.
So if you're doing your commit and it's committing the changes you made in the code, right? But you brought the images in through the command line to save them there. So is that just a shortcut, or is it another change? So writing in the command line to get the image, and then it popped over on the tree. Right?
Same thing. Right? This file tree is simply an abstraction of what you would otherwise see on the command line, right? So this is the operating system. The mouse, the windows, all that stuff is just an interface. When you're double clicking on something, somewhere along the line, you're saying open index.html, something like that, right? Everything that you do can be done on the command line. So is it a shortcut? For someone like me, yes. This is the way I prefer to do it. I just want to demonstrate that a little bit. I want to drive that point home a little bit more. So
that's what but is it a change only that you need to commit only if it's in the code, or like because you have the writing from bringing in the images, like is that a change too?
That is, those are new files that were added.
Okay.
So here's my index, right? So this is all identical to up here. Well, actually, with the exception of this .git and all this, but this file is the same as this file.
So then that's something that also has that. Okay.
And here's the images. So here's stove 1, stove 2, stove 3. Just a different lens through which to view the world, I suppose.
So then you still have to add those files.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, you still have to add these to Git. Thank you. So I'm going to say the Git status. I was going to have you walk me through this, but all right. So I've got a couple of things. I've got this index file which is being tracked, but has been modified. If I want to see exactly what I changed, I can say git diff, just to remind myself, right? And you can make, whoops, I hate when I do that. There we go. So yeah, I added some stuff to the body. Actually, I added a whole bunch of stuff. So the green stuff is the same.
I might add something after you do the diff. When you want to exit, just press a Q.
Yeah,
I had a problem too.
that's yeah. Sorry, these are things, and these are good questions because sometimes I will just take things for granted. So
Finish with the N.
yeah. So if you're using your arrow keys or if you're using the J and the K key, incidentally, you can make it go up and down. It's like, well, what do you do now? How do I get out of this interface? Press Q. Not everyone's going to know that, right? Like, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so this is what I've got. I still haven't committed anything. So I'm just going to add get image. That's the only thing. Get image. Sorry, get index.
What's the secret logic if it's not letting you type in?
Oh, is there something wrong again? We just closed the terminal window and opened a new one, so you can go to yeah. That's kind of a weird thing. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, so get add index. I run get status just because that's what I always do. Now I give myself a message: get commit -m, add content to landing page. Right, get a little bit more descriptive. Okay, so now I got get status again. Still need to add these images to source control. This is kind of goofy a little bit. Git doesn't do too well with binary files, but it will track them. It just might not necessarily track the changes. So don't trouble yourself with that. I'm going to say git add images. Just like I did before, nothing different. But this time I added that directory with those 3 image files inside. New file, new file, new file. Okay, so now I'm going to commit. There's stage for commit, get commit -m, get images or get stove images. There we go. All right, so here I am. My working directory is clean. No changes need to be committed. But it's giving me a little message. Okay, well, it's telling me origin master is behind by 2 commits. You just saw me make 2 commits. If I want this to be the same as GitHub, I got to push. Git push. Before I did this, git push origin master. Once you've done this one time, it just makes assumptions about where you're going to push to next. So unless you've got different repositories, at this point, you can enjoy this shortcut. Just type in git push. It knows what you're pushing, what you're trying to do. Hit enter.
Where can we see the file changes on GitHub?
You want to see them?
Yeah, like where can you
Okay.
verify that it's been done?
All right. We will do that right now. Okay. All right. There it goes. Okay. So now the most obvious change you're going to see. Whoa. Oh, snap. Go on. I lost all my pictures. Look at that. I don't know what happened. Okay, so here's the GitHub. The fastest way would be just to look at the content, but you can also go to where to go? Commits, right here. So this one's probably not worth looking at, but okay, so I don't remember what I did, what content I just recently added. Sorry, this page is a little bit big. Make that a little bit smaller. So this is the second most recent commit. I press enter, or sorry, I click on the link rather. It's going to show you some of the differences. So this is what it thinks is a difference. It's just kind of weird how these things line up sometimes. But the green is the new contribution. This was the old one, which got overwritten. So if you want to know precisely what you did using GitHub, this is what you do. In the general, how do I know that it updated? You can tell because you'll get this this message down here. It's kind of cryptic, I admit, but this is a success message. Let's try. I could try to botch it. Here, say git push. Say I enter the wrong username. It's going to tell you, right? Invalid username or password, or maybe you're committing all over the place. Something's out of sync. Then you have the opportunity to fix it. Good questions. Any other questions?
Yeah, question. Where you go those images of Google,
Mhm.
then you have to drag and drop them in the folder. Now, I only get like 20 images, 30 images, and I want to be lazy and want to all of them in one there.
Right.
And I don't want to drag it to the folder. I want it to automatically go in that folder.
Here. Trying to keep things simple, but I'll download another image. All right. Okay, rocket stoves again.
Yeah, I looked up that command. It was an asset. So I'm pretty sure you can just do that for it.
Oh, you can do that too. Oh, that's a good way to do it. Well, yeah, Troy just brought something, a really good way to do it. I'll show you what I was going to do, and I'll show you Troy's way. So there's lots of different lazy ways you can do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm just going to post this into the Slack group.
Oh, that one looks pretty cool. Okay, let's grab this guy. All right. Okay, so this is what I was going to do. I'm just going to navigate the tree. This is very rudimentary Linux command line interfacing. If I want to see what's in my directory, there it is, readme, images, index. If I want to go into a directory, I want to go inside of images and see what's in there. I use cd, change directory space, and I tell it which directory I want to go into. So before I was dragging and dropping, now I'm actually living inside this images folder directory. I can type in w1d2. There it goes. The new one was called Nomad Rock. Now, the one that Troy just suggested, another very good option. Here I'm sitting in my root directory, so now I'm back where I'm with readme, images, and index.html.
That should be -p and then URL minus p in the path of the files and just images.
Okay, so I'm going to grab another image.
I don't know why this wouldn't work, but I don't have 100% confidence in it working.
It's not the way I usually do it, but that's a valid one. Okay, so let's grab that. You could do wget URL minus p. Doesn't need a full path. Can't possibly, right?
I think it's just going to want /images because it's already in this master, so we should look for that path.
Maybe it's
this one with -o wants the
let's just try it.
The real full path.
You need that. I'm using a -o option. I'm actually not sure this is going to work. So -p. That looks like it's going to do something bad though.
Yeah.
There it goes. Oh, there it is. It worked.
Right.
So all I did differently before I just changed into the directory. I guess it's not really that much different than just dragging and dropping. The other one was I just told it, okay, well, I don't want it to end up here in my current directory. I want to put it into images. So I used a -p option. Too much to know. Don't commit it to memory. If you're really curious, I mean, really, it's all about learning the lingo and being able to ask Google when you get down to it. Learning the lingos can be tricky. Okay, any other questions?
How would you, like in C and C++, you can add columns so that if somebody else opens the code,
Right. How do you do that in HTML?
do you do that?
Absolutely. So the question is, sometimes you want to leave notes to yourself. Pretty much every language I've ever encountered has this feature. You can just write stuff that's going to be ignored by the browser, for example, in this case, or by the interpreter or compiler. To do that in HTML, it's actually a real pain in the neck. You have to use this tag. And anything in here, this is invisible to the browser. This will not get displayed. Total pain to type, but open bracket or less than sign, exclamation point, dash dash, note to self, dash dash, greater than sign. So watch what happens. I refresh, I should see no change. But if I look inside the body, oh, there's a note to myself, right? But I'm highlighting it. There's no box. There's the first box. There's the big box. Just a note to yourself. Any other questions? That's a good one. All right, I will summarize this, and Troy will be around to help you.